meeting is being recorded. Thanks for your patience. Apologize for the delay. Let me get my Governor Baker's order. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Medfield Dale Street School Building Committee is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen or view this meeting while in progress may do so following the instructions on the agenda and meeting notice. And I would note also that the Massachusetts legislature voted to extend those provisions through April of next year. We don't have an updated statement, so I don't know if the town's going to work on that. Or Christine, are you going to update that statement at any point?
We're getting you an updated statement.
Thank you. Okay. Just to note that obviously last week went very long. We had 3 hours. We've got a lot to cover tonight. I am going to limit it tonight till 9 o'clock. I think that's enough time to get through what we need to. If there's still time for public input relevant to the agenda this evening, we will take it as time permits. But we do have a lot to get to that we weren't able to cover last week because of extended time for public input. So I'm going to.
It's like 2 o'clock in the morning right now.
That's right. I know. You're across the pond, right?
I am.
As they say.
Only 12:20.
Did you have your bangers and mash or?
Yeah, that's coming up, I think, at the weekend.
All right. All right. Well, so we'll jump right into the agenda. Are we just jumping straight to Tina?
Yep, I'm here. Sorry, my camera is not working, but
That's okay.
Hopefully you can hear me okay.
Yep, we can.
Okay. Yeah, I think we are going to jump right into two items that was left on the agenda from last week. One of them that we'd like to go through first is the interior renderings, if that's okay, and then we'll go into the VE cost estimate.
Yep.
Okay, great. I'm going to share my screen, and we also have Kate Hespenhide and Kless from our office here. I think Kless is here. Yep.
So do you want me to promote Dan? I think Dan is also here.
Dan, yep, please.
Yeah.
And then if you can let me share my screen.
I've just shared that, Mike. I've made Tina a co-host.
What's that?
I've just made Tina a co-host. So
okay.
She should...
I put all panelists can share too. I changed the settings, so
okay.
Should be fine. For some reason, oh, there it goes. Okay. You should be all set, Tina. Let me know if you have any trouble.
Okay, great. Okay. You can see the screen okay?
Yep.
Okay, so we'd like to start off with some interior renderings. We've been talking about finishes, materials, interior concept, and this was a few meetings ago. And since then, as we continue to develop the design of the building, the interior, to more detail, but still on a schematic level, we wanted to develop these renderings, basically 3-dimensional views of the interior. And I'm going to start, I think we have about 6 views here. Between Kless, myself, and Kate, will go through and describe them and talk about what you're seeing here. Okay, and I think, Kless, it might make sense for you to start describing and Kate to also jump in.
Yeah, I thought I would give you a little overview of what you're seeing, and then Kate can jump in and describe some of the materials that you're seeing. So hopefully you recognize this as the view you would get when you walk in the front door of the building.
Claes, can you speak up a little? It's a little hard to hear you. Thank you.
Can you hear me now? Is that better?
That is better, yep.
Okay. So hopefully you recognize this as the view as you enter the front door of the building. What you're looking at is the hallway that stretches down to the learning stair at the very end. On your immediate right are a series of windows, which is a theme throughout the common spaces in this hallway. On the first two windows you're seeing here are views, would give you views into the band room. Beyond that, where the two little girls are standing, is the sort of a glass corner, which is the entry to the media center. And you can see from this angle, you'll be able to see deep into the media center. And we have a view of that room as well. On the left side, we have started thinking about how we could activate this node of the building, this arts node. If you remember back to when we started laying out the building, we were calling this area sort of the arts node, because the art room, the band room, the music room are all adjacent to this sort of entry space. Hopefully you're seeing the clock at the end of the hallway. This is the location that we had talked about. So in a very prominent location that you'll see from here, but obviously it also be a big part of the learning stair environment, which we'll see in a second. We have the double height space. We've started thinking about, typically in these kinds of spaces, we need to do something to mitigate sound. So we're thinking about whether we might have some sound baffles and things like that. And also, you can't really see it in this view, but between those baffles, those in that orange color, would be some windows, which would be bringing light down into the media center as well from the south. On the left, you're also seeing there's a window again, repeating that into the band room. Maybe Kate can tell you a little bit about the materials you're seeing here.
Sure. Yeah, in terms of the materiality, it's a lot of what we described as we were going through the different spaces during one of our previous meetings. But essentially, we wanted the materials to start to capture the concepts that we had presented, the time and music. So you can see on the walls, we're showing a tile wainscot, but the patterning is reflective of the music concept in that we are looking at establishing a certain rhythm with the pattern, but the tempo of this vertical pattern would increase. So there would be more frequent patterning in areas where there's more activity and more collaboration between students. You'll also start to see the idea of time coming into play here, the idea of tying it to the seasons with the color palette. This particular hallway, we're proposing to use more of a fall-inspired palette with the warm rust colors and some of the greens. And you can also really start to see the light coming through these skylights. And that relates to the idea of time as the sun moves across the sky over the course of the day. So through these renderings, we're starting to find these opportunities to really highlight those moments where the dappling of light and shadow really comes into the space and creates a really dynamic environment.
We asking questions for each, or do we wait till the end?
I think if you have a question specific to this rendering, then feel free.
Is the white, I assume the white wall is a dry wall, right?
Correct, yeah.
And is there, so that's a couple of comments first from like really bad personal experience. Having that, especially when there's a lot of light put on it, is a very difficult wall to finish properly. But secondly, it's a very big wall and it's a lot of white. Is there a plan to do something with that?
I think we'll be breaking up the wall in different ways. Another thing that you probably won't see reflected in these renderings quite yet is the idea that we're going to be introducing graphics in certain key locations within the building. I think that'll certainly help. I think, for us, we use color and light and shadow to sort of give, because it's such a big building, we use those things to sort of break down the scale of all these elements. So for instance, the piece on the right of the hallway, which is the library, sort of sticks out a little, and it has its own distinct color and form, and it's meant to sort of highlight that there's a special thing happening there. So you'll see moments like that. So really it's about the contrast as much as it is about, the colors themselves.
Okay. I would just make sure we do address that white wall in some way.
Yeah, so Tim, my initial reaction to this, I gave a little feedback to the design team that this is sort of supposed to be that accentuating node, and I think it doesn't quite get there yet in terms of the arts node. So I agree. I think there's something that needs to happen, whether it's on the wall or on the floor or something with lighting, but it really doesn't have sort of it doesn't draw your eye from, say, the other end of the hall yet. So that was some comments that I had.
Anybody else? I will say, Mike, we already did start having some discussions about how I think your comment's really valid. How we sort of designate this with its own sort of. This feels very much the space a result of, it's like a negative space between things, but we
Right.
also want to give it its own sort of three-dimensional character on its own. So we're going to look at how we can sort of maybe mix up the floor patterning a little bit here, and maybe it has something to do with the geometry of the actual walls themselves or the soffits as well.
Any other comments?
I
We
would
go-
just- I would just say, Tina, that's probably the perfect place to put core values. I know that Steve has them in the current Dale Street. And I think that might be a nice wall to put the core values and the graphics like Gus was talking about. We had seen really well done graphics in Harvard. So I think maybe something like that would be really brighten that area up a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, Jeff.
Yeah.
And we know that that's really important message that's in the existing Dale School, and we wanted to bring that to the new elementary school as well.
I think there's a lot of really dynamic forms happening in this hallway, and I'm really excited about the idea of sort of integrating the core ideas and not just writing them on the wall, but sort of integrating them into the architecture in some way. So I think that's a great idea. All right, I think we can go to the next one.
Yep.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Next slide.
So this side is very similar. It's just a slight look to the left. But what you're seeing here is the hallway that goes down to the gym, and you're obviously seeing the gym at the end of that hallway. Obviously, again, very similar, but just a slightly different view, so you can understand the seating element and that, when you're at this location, and again, to Jeff's comment, Mike's comment, sort of tying this node to some different finishes that sort of celebrated as such a little more here, I think, if that helps.
Yeah, and just to orient you, as Kless mentioned, this quarter takes you down to the gym. So right off of this page is the front office, the main office, and so behind you is the main entrance. Any comments and questions?
I'm not gonna like comment like the same basic point. So there's, it's still an elementary school. So even though it's upper elementary, so, and I know these are renderings and early renderings even, but I do think we need to get to Mike's comment, just sort of create some more visual not stimulation, but kind of connection to the mission of the school. So I'm sure you'll work on that, but that would be my comment looking at these. The floor, for instance, is, it's understated and all, but I don't know that that's the right place for an understated flooring pattern. And maybe that's just a placeholder.
Thanks, Tim. And it is.
I think it is sort of a placeholder, Tim, but I think it's also good to get your reaction.
Well, I mean, I'd like others to share their thoughts, but I'm just saying that's
Well,
my reaction to it.
in a way, I feel like Mike was saying sort of the same thing.
Yeah.
And my initial reaction when he said that was, I think our best opportunity would be to do something very interesting with the floor in this area to sort of really sort of highlight that this is a special place. So that's probably where we'll start, but then that'll sort of radiate out into other elements.
Okay.
So this is a view looking back. Like I mentioned, we've sort of set up this rhythm of these windows that go up and down the corridor. In certain instances, we were imagining that the windows, whether it's because they're not in a place where you would necessarily want to view in, like in this location, we would put in these display cases, something I know that Jeff had said he was very interested in the previous meeting. So this view is looking back towards the front entry. You can see the office. Again, I think that the arts node comment, is valid here as well.
And I think what we're not showing right now in these renderings that will bring a lot of energy and just a special quality to this space is student display, really showcasing what the students are doing in this space, and that will bring a lot of energy and life into this area.
It's a hard thing to render,
Yeah.
but it's a really important part of all these schools. I think, especially in the arts node, again, I think it's important that the children have a place to display their work, and that will be definitely a part of this area. All right, we go to the next one. So this is the band room on the very front of the building. When you see the building from the outside, the gable form. This is a room that has the ability to be sort of split in two and become two smaller rooms. This is obviously a view with the partition open, and the big windows that you're seeing in the back are the windows that you see at on the outside of the building as you arrive at the building. Again, we've started to think about colors and textures, but generally we're using linoleum flooring and a mixture of colors and occasionally wood tones. There'll be again acoustic treatment on the ceilings. Tried to sort of show that in these renderings, but again, that's going to need a little more development as we go forward. Kate, do you want to say anything about the color palette?
Sure. I was going to say that you'll notice that we are proposing to paint the structure, the columns that transition up to the beams, to really showcase this really dynamic and interesting ceiling. I think the architecture in this space really speaks for itself. And so we want to strategically use color to really highlight that.
This is a view of the media center. So this is
I'm
looking sort of.
Just sorry, this is more technical, but is there any spray fireproofing, or is it pretty much, it doesn't require it?
We do have spray fireproofing, so this will be a rated structure. So in certain areas where we do have exposed, it will be intumescent paint. And what you're seeing is mostly in this front area of the building. Everywhere else, it will be covered with drywall or with a finish.
So are all these metal, is all this framing going to be intumescent painted that we just saw?
That hasn't been fully determined yet. So if I go back, to this. So you might notice the beams maybe, but the columns may be covered. So that's still to be finalized. And sort of similar in this view here. So we're trying to be selective.
Yeah, because you know what I'm getting at with that.
Yep, absolutely.
You don't have to be shy about it, Tim. That can get expensive, I think, is the point.
Yep. And we're definitely trying to be selective of where we have the intumescent paint that would be important to express the structure as part of the architecture and the
It's not
interior.
only expensive, it is expensive, but it's not, it really takes good attention to like making sure it gets put on properly, and
Yep.
otherwise it doesn't really look good.
Agree.
So this is a view of the library, looking east towards the front. As we talked about previously, there's sort of two parts to the library. There's the sort of smaller stack area as you enter with a soffit, and you can see that sort of in the background with a variety of different shelving for books and sort of little breakout areas for kids to read. And then sort of in the foreground here by the big window is sort of our reading room, our reading area that can accommodate classes of students. And of course, you know, this furniture layout is preliminary, but you know, the idea is that, you know, this the light, the north light from this room makes it really a wonderful place for kids to come and sit and read and check out books and be active here. Really, it's it should be one of the more special places in the school, and we want the design to reflect that.
Yeah, we really love the idea of activating the wall when you first walk in on your right, the one that you see beyond with the taller stacks, and doing that by making these tall stacks become a feature in themselves as they really bring you into the space. And then once you're within the larger portion of the media center, keeping the shelving low so you can really experience the views and the light coming in through the windows. We also started exploring different ideas for patterning for the floor finishes. What you're seeing here is kind of reminiscent of one of the initial concept images we showed, where patterning could be inspired by sound waves. Additionally, the way that we had started to align these different colors was with the windows coming in from the corridors. So this idea that it's kind of mimicking the way that light would start to come in through the windows.
Is that a carpet?
Like
What
that.
kind of flooring is that?
We're proposing carpet in the media center, carpet tile.
Okay, thanks.
So this is the cafeteria right across the hall from the library. Obviously on the left is the stage, and at the back, a big window that looks out towards the playground. And then along the right side, we have the taller, skinnier windows, which will let in some nice light, but will also be a little more discreet along that elevation because we have it's facing one of the classroom bars.
So if you can put your hands down, I think you're blocking your mouth. Whenever you do that, you go out. Thanks.
Yeah. Similarly to what Kate had mentioned in the library, we're thinking about, or in the band room, we're thinking about how the structure is painted and how that sort of reinforces, you know, the architecture. Again, acoustic treatment here, lighting, you know, this is all, you know, evolving, but you're also seeing a bench along the right side where we could have smaller tables, and then along the window in the back, you can't see it very well, but there's a sort of a counter height, or stool height counter where kids can sit and actually eat lunch and look out the window.
And in terms of the color and materiality, we're locating a feature material at the opening to the proscenium, just to really draw your attention and let that be a focal point within the space. And then in terms of the color palette, we were starting to explore ways we could introduce the season spring in here with yellows and greens.
And this will be looked at by the acoustical engineer.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Is there a plan to have theatrical lighting in front of that stage at all or behind it?
The plan is to have some simple lighting control, but not necessarily at the level where you're having like a musical or a Broadway sort of type of show. So there will be some amount of control and dimming, but not to the level where you're able to control like spotlights and things like that.
Not like the high school.
Okay.
Sort of wash lighting.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Any other questions?
Looks like Mike Marcucci raised his hand. He must have gotten bounced out. Sorry. Let me promote him back. Go ahead, continue.
All right, so this is the, obviously the end of the hallway. This is the learning stair that sort of centers the education wing. It's the learning node, if you will. What you're starting to see here is a sort of a cooler color palette. We obviously have the clock, which we're all very excited about. Kate can talk a little bit more about the materials and the concept, but hopefully you're noticing the piano key steps up the learning stair as well. Kate.
Sure. Yeah, this was one of our first thoughts for integrating the idea of musical instrument iconography into the architecture. So as you can see on the stairs, kind of this rhythm that mimics piano keys, which we thought was really playful and an exciting moment of discovery when students realized what it was. For the colors, we were inspired by winter for this palette. And you can also see here, which is a continuation of the wall at the entry, as the skylights are coming in and hitting the wall, opportunities to really highlight these moments as the light's passing through the space.
And I will say, I'll mention again that, these are development renderings that we've been, starting to think about how these spaces come together. But the graphics will play a big part of this. And I think the wall on the right-hand side where the sunlight is actually beaming down, I think in our mind is a place very similar to Harvard, for those of you who went, where we could have a really large wall graphic here. And, obviously we want to work with you on what the appropriate subject for that would be, whether it's a world map or something like we did in Harvard or something completely new and different. But that obviously that wall is, a really, could be a really great spot for something like that. And we're excited to get our graphics folks together and work with you on those pieces in this area and throughout the building.
That's kind of prime real estate right there.
Yeah, I had put a couple of placeholders and then I kept taking them out because they just weren't right, because it was just a placeholder image. So I just ended up leaving it white, but we very much think of that wall as something that has a lot of activity and vibrancy to it.
And you may remember from a few weeks ago when we did the presentation for the interior concept and informing you of the graphics ability that Arrow Street has, that's part of the design of the building. And And so a lot of these are not, they're not, I would say, like clip art type of graphics that these are fully customized graphics that we do that are very specific to these projects. So when Kless says that he was trying to put in a placeholder and it didn't look right, that's because we really look at what is so special about this project, and that it's very customized specifically for this project. So you'll start to see those in development later on in the phase once we get into DD and CDs. But just at this stage, we're not there yet.
Will there be a screen or something in front of those, in front of those theater stairs or anything? Will they be able to project?
Yep. Yes,
Okay,
exactly.
cool.
That is the exact idea. So you might see a portion of the wall here. So this
Yep.
wall, that is a blank wall. We would like to keep it as a blank wall. So this might be one of the only blank walls that will not be covered with a graphic for that purpose, so that you can project a presentation, a movie.
Awesome.
Yep.
Great.
Excellent. So that was the last of our rendering. And so we just wanted to kind of give you a sort of a sneak peek at how some of these spaces are coming together. Again, this is very preliminary, and they will be continued to be developed as we go into design development. Any other questions or comments before we move on to the next topic?
Not for me.
No.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing for a second so that I could find the place where we will start to talk about the VE.
Yes.
Okay. You can see my screen again?
Yep.
Okay, great. I started from the very beginning, but we had gone through the comparison, just quickly recapping the comparison between PSR, PM&C's schematic design cost estimate, and AM Fogarty's design cost estimate. And then we, at a high level, we talked about that we went through VE and we found many potential options for VE, and how some of those options that we are considering and recommending will help bring the initial cost estimate down. And so this is where we start to get into each item of the VE list. And
So,
yeah.
Tina, maybe I can preface this conversation a little, because I don't know that everyone is familiar with our lingo.
Yep. I'm going to go back.
So, yeah, so, the initial cost estimates came in, and in my mind were high. We worked, I asked the design team to go back, take a look at, where we could refine the design and start to wring out some costs. So they came back with a fairly extensive list. At this stage of the game, obviously, I think many of we've seen some fairly large increases in the construction market for certain things, commodities, and some of that's incorporated into the pricing. Obviously, we're hoping that stabilizes before we go to bid, but for the purposes of getting us to a budget, I asked the design team to come up with items that we could potentially either swap out or change that would have minimal impact on the operation or function of the building or the long-term care and maintenance of the building, and that we weren't sacrificing much, and ways we can really kind of simplify things. They came back with an extensive list, and then I took a first pass through with the design team and with Jeff, and we kind of sort of made some recommendations. And what we're going to go through tonight are those recommendations, and you know, maybe we make some changes to the list based on how the committee feels. But you know, what I saw as yeses or recommended that we take are what I would call low-hanging fruit, that are, you know, relatively easy things to take that help lower the cost and get a little more conservative with how we're spending money, and that wouldn't really be evident to you know, most people, and nor would it impact the function or educational program or anything like that. So and then the maybes, you know, we may decide to take some tonight. We may decide just to leave that list. Obviously we have to keep some items in our back pocket should we get to the next phase and there's something that's a surprise there, and that we need to get back to budget. So you know, we don't want to, at this stage, in my opinion, we don't want to just take everything on the list, because that would basically get us down to bare bones. And some of these things on the list, more the ones that are in the no category or in the maybe some of the maybes, may have some impact, and it may be minor or maybe larger than that, but some impact on the function of the building or some programs that we really want to keep or how we want to operate the building. So I think we just want to be responsible about it. I think we want to, you know, make some decisions about still meeting all of the goals of the educational program, but really recognizing that this building is, you know, doesn't need to be a showpiece. It's should be a relatively conservative building, but still function well. So that's sort of the way I approached it. And so really looking for your feedback tonight. I think Tina's going to run us through the list. And then if people have any objections to how something is categorized, you know, please raise them. But we do want to get through this as much as possible, you know, fairly quickly, because there's 87 items. So I don't want to get bogged down too much on, you know, one item that we can table for another time. But anybody have any questions before we start going through the list?
I thought, I don't have a question, but Larry made the suggestion last time that they just get presented, and then if somebody wants to hold them, they say hold and we come back.
Yes, that's a good point. Larry had suggested that we just go through them, and then after they're presented to the committee, if people have any objection to how it's categorized, like a yes that should be a no, or a no that should be a maybe, or that somebody just sort of puts a hold on it and we'll circle back to it, but then we'll move on to the next one. Everybody okay with that approach?
Sure.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. So I'm going to move on through here. So just to orient you what you're seeing here, I'm going to be zooming in as well, so that you can get a little bit closer, because I had to split it into 2 columns here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in and pan around as I read through the items. But just to, so you're familiar with what you're seeing here, the first 3 columns are the yes, maybe, and no's. And you'll see X's on each of these items, whether it's under the yes, maybe, or no. And these are, as Mike had said, we had gone through with the working group. So these are recommendations only. And each item has a number next to it. So what I'll do is, as we go through it, if someone calls out that they want to hold on one of these items, I will mark it. I'll probably highlight it or mark it with a circle. And then if you want to make note of which items you put a hold on, you can basically go by these numbers and we could then go back to it. So if you need to jot something down, that might be the best thing to do. And then what you'll see next is a description, a very short description of what the VE, the proposed VE item is. And then you'll see the initial value. So this is before the markup. And then you'll see contingency markups, which is about 25% to the value. And then you'll see the total potential savings. And then with the recommendations column, any item that has a yes marked next to it, it gets carried over into this recommended savings column. So that's what you see here. Any questions? Okay. And then one last thing is that we tried to group them into 4 categories. What you see here is building structure exterior, and then building interior, MEP and fire protection items, and then site. So that's how that's organized as well. Okay, so we'll start with item 1.1, provide under slab insulation only at the perimeter. Currently, the base estimate has insulation across the entire underside of the slab. In some cases, that's not necessary. For building performance, it's definitely more robust, but it doesn't need to be. So we are recommending a savings here. 1.2. Oh, Tim, you're speaking.
Sorry, just quickly, and I don't mean that, like, I'll hold on that. 1.1, I want to put a hold, but
You want to put a hold on it? Okay.
a very quick question. It doesn't affect the net zero energy EUI and all, right?
It does not.
Then take the hold off. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, 1.2, delete steel truss at the gable roofs. At the gable roofs, there's many ways of constructing that. One of it was, since we knew it was going to be exposed, we wanted to do steel truss so that you can see the framing of it in more of an intricate construction, but it doesn't have to be that way. We can simplify it to sort of something that's really just beams and columns. And so that would be a savings, and we do recommend, that's a recommendation. 1.3A.
Sorry, can you hold 1.2, please?
1.2? Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, thanks.
No problem. Try to highlight it. Okay. Okay, 1.3A, reduce the roof screen to 50%, including steel support. And what that is there's roof screens that screen some of the mechanical equipment at the rooftop. And there's some areas where we feel that's going to be less visible anyhow, especially if you're standing up close to the building, but from afar, you might get a glimpse of it. But we do think that there might be some savings that is possible and still maintain a nice aesthetic look to the exterior of the building. So this is recommended, yes. 1.4D, brick veneer masonry in lieu of ACM. ACM is the metal panel exterior at the classroom windows only. And so ACM versus brick is a higher cost, but we think we could do a nice fenestration and still maintain the design with the brick veneer. So that was recommended. 1.5B, at the roof parapets, delete the ACM fascia and replace it with the single ply metal coping with a reveal profile. Sort of similar, we will still maintain a design integrity at the roof parapets, but just using a simplified material, and that was recommended, yes. 1.11, replace a cellular acoustical deck with a standard acoustical deck. Same performance. It's just that it looks from the interior, instead of a flat deck from the underside, you'll see sort of the corrugation of the deck. But performance wise, it still will provide acoustic value to it. So that was recommended. 1.14 or 1.14, delete precast concrete window header and sills and accent bands. And this we recommend it. We believe that we still have the concrete base that still provides the sills to many of the windows, and the headers that can be more simplified to a masonry or another material. And then let me scroll up. Now we'll get into the building interior. 2.1, epoxy flooring in lieu of quarry tile in the kitchen, servery, and in lieu of porcelain tile, floor tile in the toilet rooms. And that is recommended. Yes, performance-wise, it's good. Maintenance-wise, it still is acceptable. And we had reviewed this with Amy Colleran, and she's fine with this change as well. 2.7, revise custom millwork at the classroom wings. And this is really just making some adjustments. So there's less millwork, but we're still maintaining some of the partial height walls and really simplifying it. But functionally, it still does what it was intended. And design wise, we can still maintain the intent as well. So this was a savings that we do recommend. 2.8, at the kitchen, we recommend FRP full height panels in lieu of full height stainless steel panels. Again, a lesser cost material. It's still durable, cleanable. And again, this was also reviewed with Amy Colleran, and for maintenance, she was fine with that. 2.9, at the media center, reduce the hardwood veneer panels by 50%. Since this is early on, we usually have some sort of placeholder for veneer panels that tie into the bookshelves and things like that, especially at the media center. So we think we could reduce the scope by 50%. And so that's recommended. 2.17, reduce interior glazing at the STE rooms from 433 square feet to 240 square feet. So about half. So instead of one large window at the STE room, they may be broken up to a series, but still allows light in and people could see out. So it still functions as proposed. 2.21, reduce frameless mirrors from 150 to 75 square feet. This was probably more of a correction. It's a small number. So we'll keep mirrors in the single-use toilet rooms, but the grouped toilet rooms, like the boys and the girls room, where the vanity is actually a shared vanity facing outward, will not have mirrors. 2.22, reduce stage lighting from 65,000 to 50,000. So this was just a reduction. Again, we were thinking holistically that this is going to be not for Broadway musicals, but still be able to maintain some control of lighting and dimming for different performances and concerts. And similar to 2.23, reduce the AV equipment so that there's still speakers and some control and connections for AV equipment, but not to the level of like the high school. 2.24, reduce stage rigging and curtains. Similar, there will still be curtains, but the rigging where they're usually motorized, we don't need to do that. So this was also reduced. Similar to related is 2.25, power for rigging equipment. 2.26, delete sound system. Oh,
Sorry,
yes.
just on the lighting, AV, rigging.
Yep.
I mean, it's sort of arbitrary. I mean, at this stage, right? I mean, I'm okay reducing it, but it could just, we can maybe just put a hold on it, sorry.
You want to put a hold on it?
Yeah,
Sure,
just have 2 cents on it, that's all.
no problem.
They're all pretty much the same thing.
They're all related, yeah. Okay. Okay, so 2.26. Delete sound system in the media center. The media center, that was something that we had looked into, since it's more about sort of the books, iPads, digital reading, things like that. A sound system was not necessary. I think that's probably better spent for the stage, at the cafetorium, or at the learning center. So if you were going to do some sort of presentation, it would be at those locations versus the media center. So we thought it would not be necessary to have it at the media center. 2.27, reduce environmental graphics by 1,000 square feet. And this was thoughtfully taken because we did estimate the number of areas and the square footage. It is a lot of area, but we feel that it is important, but we also felt that we could probably reduce it by 1,000 square feet. And so that is recommended.
Could you put a hold on that, Tina?
Sure. Okay. Now on to the MEP and fire protection. There actually isn't any fire protection, but it just falls under MEP. 3.2, change the switchboard and panel board buses to aluminum. When we felt that that was acceptable, it doesn't change the performance or scope. Similar 3.3, change dry type transformer to aluminum. 3.5, utilize aluminum feeders sized 100 amps or more. 3.11, utilize PVC piping for all condensate drains in lieu of insulated copper piping. 3.13, for displacement systems only, eliminate concealed return air ductwork insulation with exception of 20 feet distance from the exterior to the connections to the AHUs. 3.15, eliminate the AHU factory test requirements. And just keep in mind that this doesn't mean that there aren't any testing or balancing happening. It's just that it wouldn't be from the manufacturer.
Could you put a hold on 3.13?
3.13, sure.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, and then on to site items. 4.3A, change 50% of the concrete sidewalks to bituminous concrete or asphalt. We thought that would be a good savings. We're not reducing the amount of sidewalks, we're just changing the materials. Similar to 4.4B, change 50% of the unit pavers to cast in place concrete pavement.
And also keep in mind, there's currently no concrete sidewalks at Wheelock. They're all asphalt bituminous.
Yep.
So it would be keeping with the character of the site.
Thank you, Mike. 4.5, reduce 10 to 5 site benches. The locations of where these benches haven't been determined yet, but we felt that maybe we could reduce the number of them. And this is something that can be added back later on if we find that there's money or Also, this could be one of those opportunities for donations as well. 4.6, reduce cast in place seat walls with precast cap from 260 linear feet to 180 linear feet. There's some areas where we felt we're not taking them away, but we could probably just reduce the lengths of them. 4.7, this is specific to a line item in the cost estimate 143, replace a retaining wall that has to do with some of the grade changes. And instead of a retaining wall, we would put in a steps and landing off of the gym. So this is actually the back by the loading area where there's some grade change. And then 4.8, delete temporary irrigation and add additional hose bibs for manual watering the plants. So plants that are first installed, the first 2 years require some additional watering. So the temporary irrigation is really meant for that initial establishment of the plants. Instead of installing that, it basically means that the grounds people would have to hand water with a hose or with sprinklers for the duration of the first 2 summers.
Can you hold that one, please?
Sure.
Thanks.
.16, replace demountable bollards with standard steel bollards. The demountable bollards was more of an allowance. We're not 100% sure where those would be, but there are some areas potentially where maybe emergency vehicles might want to get closer to the building. But bollards are typically really where the drop-off school bus drop-off and the parent drop-offs are, so where cars are coming close to the building. But if those were standard bollards, emergency vehicles can still get around the building in other ways. So we don't think this will be an issue. 4.19, replace electronic gate with a metal pipe gate and lock. And this is specific to the emergency vehicle only access road around the building. 4.20, delete the soccer goals. And we think that there are existing soccer goals that's going to remain and just get relocated to the new field. And so that is the 34 items that we recommended, yes. But there are a few highlighted items on here that we want to put a hold on. Mike, at this time, does it make sense to just run through the maybes and the no's and then come back?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So the maybes, 38 items. And I will start at the top here. So back to building structure and exterior. So these are all maybes. So again, let us know if you want to put a hold on it, and we could come back. And the hold could mean that you think it should be taken, or it's a definite no, but we can further discuss it.
But just to be clear, we're on budget if we take all the yeses, right?
If we take all the yeses and we look at where we were at PSR stage back in the fall, including the alternates that we accepted, like the geothermal, et cetera, we're actually slightly under that budget.
But I mean, so just like, are we, if we keep the yeses, are we on the budgets that we've been telling the public and sort of had that rough tax impact based on and all that?
Well, no, because the alternates did increase that, right?
Okay.
So we did increase that, right? We went through the whole geothermal exercise.
Yeah, okay. Right.
So we expected to have an increase on the base.
Yeah.
But those were all outlined in the estimate. So if you had taken the alternates that we had on the list back in the fall, then we'd be slightly under that if you include the alternates in the base.
Okay. I get it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mike, I think Tim Baker is in the attendees. He raised his hand.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna start running through. These are the maybes.
So, before we get into the maybes, just a quick preface on this one.
Yeah.
There are some in here that I think that are worthy of converting the yeses. The question is, do we take them now? There's some that I thought definitely required some discussion with the committee before I was comfortable making a recommendation on them. If people feel like there's some here that we should just move into yeses, we can do that, put it on a hold or something, then we can reassess it.
Okay. Mike, does it make sense for you to jump in and say you want to put a hold because it might be a yes, or just further discussion? So as I run through them, you could.
Yeah, I mean, I'm more interested to hear what the committee has to say. So, let's get through the first pass, and then if we need to bring any back up, we can.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, 1.3, reduce roof screens. So this was similar to the yes, but this was actually deleting, reducing it even further. So this ended up being a maybe. And this was reducing it down to 75 linear feet. And I think the previous was at like 150 or something like that. So that's a maybe. 1.5A, this has to do with the fascia and the cornice of the roof parapets. Instead of ACM, another material that would give the same exact look, but just a different material at a lesser cost, is a fiberglass fascia. 1.6.
I can put a hold on 1.5. Yeah.
1.5, sure.
Yeah.
Okay. 1.6, precast concrete base in lieu of granite base building exterior. We have, just to describe this a little bit, we have an 8-inch granite base at the very, very base of the building, and that's all the way around the perimeter of the building. And then on top of that, we actually have a precast concrete base. And this proposal was to get rid of the granite and just bring the precast down to the ground. And this is a maybe. 1.7, delete the slab on grade admixture. And this is the admixture in the concrete that would help with the curing process of the concrete. And this was a maybe. 1.9, replace a 5-inch slab on grade with a 4-inch slab on grade. This is it would perform fine. The only thing that with the 4-inch is that there would be more likely to have cracks in the future. So in the long run, there could be some cracks that may happen in a thinner slab. 1.10, replace slab on grade, WWR, which is the metal wire mesh with a poly mesh fiber. And that would be a savings. Again, performance wise, either would work. And it does not, the poly mesh or the wire mesh can work with both a 4-inch or a 5-inch slab. 1.12, no vapor barrier under the slab on grade.
We can put a hold on that one.
Yeah. Ooh, there we go. .13, replace the roofing instead of TPO with the EPDM roof membrane. 1.15, replace copper gutters and downspouts with steel gutters and downspouts. So that is building exterior and structure. Now we're going to move on to building interior. 2.2, delete operable partitions at the stage. I think you might remember at this stage, we'll have curtains, but it was also proposed to have a partition so that they can close off the stage and actually make that into a music room so that you can teach a lesson on the stage. 2.4, at the lunch breakout rooms, delete, in lieu of, add double doors in lieu of overhead doors. And the overhead doors is really to create a large opening so it's part of the cafeteria. 2.5, reduce gym bleachers to half capacity. 2.6, at the gym, install net divider curtain in lieu of an operable partition. So instead of a hard partition that can open and close, it would just be a net curtain that divides the gym in half. 2.11, at the toilet rooms and drinking fountains, 48-inch height tile in lieu of 8-inch full height tile. 2.13, hydraulic elevator.
Sorry, just to clarify, 8 foot. Right.
8 foot, sorry.
Yeah.
2.13, hydraulic elevator in lieu of traction elevator. 2.14A, replace a 48-inch height wall tile in the corridors with 48-inch height panel lamp FRL. So in the corridors, we have 48-inch height wainscot, and we would, FRL is basically a fiber reinforced laminate panel. It's durable as well and cleanable, just a different material. 2.14B, so it would be either 2.14A or 2.14B, but it would not be both. Replace the 48-inch height wall tile in the corridors with the panel lamp FRL, except in the main corridors. So the main corridors would remain as wall tile, but other corridors would be FRL. 2.15, at the cafeteria and lunch breakout rooms, delete the built-in benches and countertops. 2.18, reduce interior glazing heights down to 9 feet at the gym, the general office, and the media center. 2.18A, reduce interior glazing heights at some locations. So that's going to be TBD. So some savings, but not necessarily specific to the gym, general office, or the media center. 2.19, replace overhead roll-up doors at the, with double leaf doors at the break. I think this might be a repeat, but that actually includes the art room and the maker space. 2.20, replace porcelain floor tile at the entrance vestibules and lobbies with linoleum flooring. Okay, 2.20, replace porcelain floor tiles at entries and, I think that was a repeat, sorry. 2.20A, replace 475 square feet of porcelain tile with linoleum flooring. So it would be one or the other. But we would keep some porcelain tile, but replace others. Okay, and then MEPs. There's a few items in here for maybes. Electric terminal heating equipment in lieu of hot water. 3.4, delete lightning preventer system. 3.6, delete 24 kilowatt uninterrupted power supply system, UPS, for tel data systems. System will be still on a generator, and individual UPSs can be purchased as part of equipment for specific equipment.
Can you hold that one?
Yeah.
Yep. 3.7, utilize non-plenum rated for communication cables in lieu of plenum rated.
You hold that one?
Yep. .8, remove concrete encasement on secondary and telecom duct banks where they are not beneath the roadway or parking lot. 3.9, reduce 50 tons of geothermal wells with electric backup boiler. Oh, this one we left in here, but we don't have a value for it. This is something that if we do consider this, it needs a little bit more analyzing by the MEP engineers to understand if the electric backup boiler can be part of the system.
What, if there's any impacts on EUI or anything like that, we would need to know that too.
Yep. And then 3.18 for the HVAC, the ACT controls, remove the energy metering capability from the BMS scope. And this ended up being maybe, but I think it's going to be more of a no because Eversource, as part of their incentives, they will require separate metering. So we may not be able to take this one anyhow.
I think that's pretty highly unlikely.
Yeah. And then site items, 4.3, change 80% of the sidewalks to bituminous concrete or asphalt. The previous one was 50%. This is being adding more to it. So that would be a bigger saving. So it would be one or the other. 4.9, delete the shade sails at the playground. 4.10, change concrete pad at the loading to asphalt.
Sorry, Tina, can you hold the 4.9, please?
Yep.
Thanks.
Okay.
So
4.11.
actually, I probably said I was gonna keep my mouth shut, but I'd actually recommend we go to a no with 4.10, but you could just highlight it as a hold for now.
Okay.
Can you highlight 4.3B too?
Yep. Okay, 4.11, remove the replacement, the mill and overlay of the existing driveway and sidewalk at the northwest of Wheelock School. So there's actually a section of driveway and asphalt. That configuration is staying and we're not changing it. But we had shown in our base drawings to basically mill it over and put down new asphalt, so be resurfaced. And so the idea with that, this could be deferred maintenance that's part of the town instead of part of the project.
That's another one that I'm leaning towards putting in the no category.
Okay. Should I highlight it?
Sure, highlight it for now, yep.
Agreed.
Okay. 4.12, delete the offsite replacement of the main water line in Elm Street and put it to DPW upgrades.
So that I need to have a conversation with the selectmen about. I know they've put some priorities on the DPW, and so we would need to get permission, to even approach that. So it's on the table on the list, but there's some other things that would need to happen if that were to ever become real. But in my opinion, that's more of another in case of emergency break glass thing.
Okay, so we'll keep it as maybe.
Yeah, and until I can have some other conversations, and again, if there's ways we can get the DPW to help out on this project to help lower some costs, especially for offsite things, I think we should. It's worth exploring. But that needs to go through the selectmen, because from what I understand, the DPW has been given certain charges that they need to live up to. So I don't know if they'll have the capacity or not.
Okay. Sort of with the same thought, for 4.13, delete the off-site traffic mitigation scope and put it to the municipality upgrades. 4.18, replace ornamental fence with the chain link fence. 4.22, replace a portion of the underground primary duct banks with poles and overhead wires.
We highlight that.
Highlight, yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, and so that is all the maybes. Okay. Onto the nose. Again, these are recommendations, so these could move into the other column as well. 1.4A, this was similar to the brick in lieu of the ACM metal panels, but these are other materials, 1.4A and 1.4B. We thought maybe we could do a fiber cement panel in lieu of the ACM metal panel. And there's two different levels of it. So you'll see fiber cement panel, Equitone and SCK are equal. Those are two different manufacturers. 1.4B, Anichiha or similar. It's also a fiber cement panel, but just a different density and has different looks sometimes. And that could give an even greater savings. 1.4C, brick veneer masonry in lieu of the ACM. And then 1.8, change the CW, which is curtain wall with the panel light honeycomb insulated glass. And this is at the gym. So the honeycomb, just to give you a little bit of background, the honeycomb insulated glass basically has an inner layer, and that helps with glare into the gym, since we have windows into the gym. So instead of that type of glazing unit, we could replace it with a cowl wall. And a cowl wall is a translucent window system. Building an interior, 2.3, delete the operable partition at the band room. 2.10, painted window sills in lieu of a solid surface window sill. 2.12, change 2 of the swing up basketball backstops to fixed backstops. 2.16, replace 3 of the multi-user sinks at the boys and girls restrooms with 9 single sinks. Scroll up here. There were no items under MEP for nose. Under site, we have 4.1, reduce the linear feet of okay, this one, sorry, we actually had a correction. So this one we can't take at all because it wouldn't be a savings, 4.1. So I'm just gonna strike that one so it's not confusing. 4.2, precast concrete curbs in lieu of granite curbs. These are the curbs at the driveways and the sidewalks. 4.4A, change all unit pavers to cast in place pavement. You might remember in the maybes, instead of changing them all, we did a percentage. 4.14, delete parking spaces at the Wheelock parking lot and at the new school south parking lot. So there are some additional spaces. The 4 at Wheelock basically means we're still replacing 1-for-1 that's there currently. But we added 4 additional ones. And then also for the new school, instead of, we added more than the minimum required by zoning. So there's 8 additional. But if we take those away, that means we're just meeting the minimum. 4.15, delete 1 outdoor classroom. 4.17, delete the wood post and rail fence. And that fence is between the parking lot and the athletic fields. 4.21, delete the sports netting. And the sports netting is basically at the parking lots next to the athletic field. So if you were to kick a ball, instead of it going into the parking lot, it goes into the net. Okay.
Thanks, Tina. And just in case some folks haven't seen it, Mike Quinlan apparently lost power. So he sent a text around to a few of us that he's rebooting as we speak. So he'll be back shortly. But I don't know about you guys. The thunder is wandering around in my area. Particularly as we were talking about removing the lightning system, I thought that's foreboding. Yeah.
Right. Or the UPS.
Yeah. So I think the goal now would be to circulate back to the few ones we put a hold on. And I'll say that this group was remarkably restrained in not putting more things into the hold category. So we appreciate that.
Yeah.
So wait, who has to let Mike back in?
Oh.
Oh, good question.
Tina, have you been designated a host or?
Tina, you can do it. You're a co-host.
Oh, I see. Yep.
Yeah, everyone should be a host.
Tina, can you let Walt Kincaid in too? He's in the attendees list.
Yeah, I was wondering, did others fall off?
And Dan too.
And Dan, okay.
I'm assuming it was not just Mike's house that lost power.
Yeah, I just had a little power cycle at my house too. Back.
Okay. Did I get everybody? I think so, right? Let me know if other people are popping up. Sorry, I didn't notice that Mike had dropped off. I noticed that some faces have shifted around, but.
So I think to pick up on the first one, 1.2, delete roof steel trusses at the gable roofs. And Tina, correct me if I go wrong there. We had shown the revised versions of those in those renderings we just looked at, correct?
We did, yep. So we could go back and take a look at those renderings.
Oh, no, that's okay. That was me who asked. I thought it had something to do, sorry, I had to Google it after I'd put a hold on it, but that's just really for aesthetics and has nothing to do with structural integrity, correct?
Correct.
Obviously.
Right.
All right. So sorry about that. A quick Google search sorted me out. Thank you.
No worries. No worries. We still have the gable roofs, so we're not deleting the gabled roofs. It's just how they're framed with the steel structure is simplified.
Super. Thank you. So no issues on my end.
Okay. I'm trying to think. I can unhighlight these, or I could mark it as.
Yeah, maybe just unhighlight them is fine.
Okay, I think that might make sense. I think I can unhighlight.
Just strike them out.
There we go. Okay. So circling back. Yep.
These ones are me. I'm just confused a little bit on where the numbers came from to begin with. So Were they allowances specifically you called for originally? I mean, the drawings aren't completed to a point where they can actually price those. So, I mean, I think that typically these types of scopes are really done late in the game, and they typically go over the budget no matter what, it's just one of those things. So I'm fine accepting them and making us meet the budgets of 50 or 35 and 17. But I guess I was just confused on where they came from. Like, did you specifically say carry $65,000 for stage lighting, like in the specs, or
No, so yes, you're absolutely correct that these are allowances at this stage of the design phase. And we're also trying to be careful of what we're calling the cafetorium. So for building code purposes, it's actually a platform. So the technical term would really be a platform versus a stage. So a stage is really referencing what you see in a theater. Or if a high school has a full-on stage that has the rigging and has the backdrops that can rise and lower. And so we wanted to make sure that we weren't at that level. So again, like you said, Mike, this is really an allowance.
Yeah, so I'm fine. I just wanted to know where they came from. I'm fine with the deletions. The only thing I'd say on is 2.24. Typically, we see stage rigging and curtains. They're either in or they're not. So to delete $5,000 from that particular line item is they're either by hand or they're mechanical. So maybe it's a different material, something like that. I'm not sure, but again, I'm fine with all four of them. I was just confused on where they came from.
Aren't they pretty healthy too? I would say even $50,000 for the stage lighting would be.
No, it's not enough.
Oh, you don't think that's
Is
enough?
that enough, Mike? I mean, that would be my question. Do you have a feel for whether those allowances can do it?
What's the like linear footage of the stage? Like 870 feet?
Linear feet or square feet?
Well, either one. Yeah, square footage.
Yeah, square feet I think is 1,500 and probably a little bit under that because it includes like the stair, the proscenium, and a ramp.
Yeah, so I mean, with some dimming systems, I mean, you can spend $100,000 on that, no problem.
Just on the dimmers. I was just thinking they were going to do just wash lights on the whole thing.
No, I think you need a little bit more than that to make it anything more than just a platform. So I think $50,000 is doable. I just think it might be challenging. And then the AV equipment, again, I mean, those packages you can buy 7 speakers for $35,000. So it really depends on what the specs come down to.
Yeah, and I think we just want to be realistic that we're not creating a performance level in an elementary school that is not aligned with standards. I'm going to take a look back at what we're doing on some of our other projects to see if these numbers are in line with that. But
generally speaking,
your point's well taken, Mike. Like you can easily, for very similar, like even a single light fixture can range from the thousands of dollars to the tens of thousands of dollars pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I think that we can absolutely minimize that. I have some experience in that for sure, but just I think you can delete them all and I'm okay with them. I just want to bring up the point that the original numbers kind of came out of like, hey, best guess. We may or may not be able to meet these numbers. Let's just be cognizant of that, depending on what Jeff and the staff want, right? And the group wants, really.
Right.
Do we have a vision of renting out this space for the the cafetorium for revenue for performance groups, and and if we do cut these items, I mean, I don't have any experience in this, but if we do cut these items, would that lessen our chances of renting out this space, perhaps?
I mean, I guess that's a good question, but I don't know that we rent out our current Dale Street auditorium very often outside of basketball.
This is a huge upgrade.
I know. But, you know, we're also like, the purpose of this project is to build a school first, not a rental auditorium.
No, I know, but even in the visioning sessions, you know, one of the things that came up was that, you know, the community can have access to the space, or it could be, you know, that our driving force is not a revenue generating space, but if a perk could be generating
Yeah,
some
I
revenue.
I think we'd be open to that, but I think, you know, it's renting out something that's designed for an elementary school, not, you know,
The high school
designing the
space.
project according to how we want to rent it.
Yeah.
So I think it's got to be sort of at an appropriate level that we can stay within a reasonable budget. And then if there are groups out there that feel that that space could be utilized and they're willing to pay some money to rent the space, then that's something we would do. But I don't know that we would go above and beyond with the notion that we can recoup that money somehow through rental fees.
Mike, I would also add that in our elementary school visits that we had a few months ago, we really saw both extremes. We saw one elementary school with literally an 8-inch platform in a cafeteria that you would trip over and wouldn't even know it was a stage.
Right.
And then the other extreme was a Broadway level elementary cafeteria with light, sound system. So I think one of the things that we had talked about was this is in the middle somewhere, where it's not so as extravagant as it was at the one school, which, you know, by the way, they told us they don't use half the stuff they have in there. And then the other school, which we didn't think was really a good model for us because it really didn't highlight, you know, the uses we want to use that stage area for. So this seemed to be more of a happy medium between the two that we had seen.
Cool. Thank you.
So Tina, for now, let's just leave them all. You can delete the yellow for those, you know, 4 items, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
The environmental graphics is the one I put the hold on that, and really just to ask the question, because we talked earlier about how that seems to be one of the major tools in the toolbox to sort of, you know, punch up the spaces. Is that 1,000? How many square feet are left when you take out 1,000?
I'm trying to remember what's left, but it's not even half. It's,
Well, I want to say it was somewhere around 7,500 square feet you were carrying, if I remember correctly.
Oh, okay.
yeah, I would have to look back, but this is much less than half.
Or maybe it was 75,000. I don't know.
7,500 sounds about correct. Yeah.
Okay. All right, you can take that off.
No, I appreciate your point, Tim. I don't want to lose that feature either. I think there's some great design possibilities that are low cost in the grand scheme of things that could really liven up the space. So I remember when we had this discussion with Arrow Street, being comfortable that we still have adequate square footage left in the budget to do some great things.
Okay, great. Thank you. My comment on the displacement error was, is that going to impact noise, or is it, what will be the impact of that, if anything? That eliminating that amount of insulation. Is it a noise thing? Is that insulation?
So I believe this was recommended by GGD. So it's not a noise thing. And I believe, Larry, correct me if I'm wrong, but we actually ended up taking this VE at one of the other projects as well. But it actually has to do with just the warm air and the cool air, and which is why they say to keep it as it for a certain distance as it exits or enters the building.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
that's like wind coming into the building, you know, blowing cold air in, stuff like that.
Yeah, okay. That's fine. You can take that off if GGD recommended it.
Yeah, Tim, we went through a pretty deep analysis of that for our Acton project and ended up taking the same deduct. It was actually quite a bit more in that particular instance because we had a lot of ductwork, bigger buildings, so forth.
Yeah.
And primarily it was about that last 20 feet, near the roof that you want to make sure. And we actually looked into the acoustics as well, and it seemed okay to us.
Okay.
4.8. Temporary irrigation. I don't remember who flagged this one.
Oh, I did. Sorry. I suppose I was just wondering, I mean, that's a big item. So is it going to get done? I remember working on the Wheelock courtyard, and people will water it by hand. Never got done.
So it would be built into the specifications that they will own a certain maintenance period and warranty period to get any plantings established. And how they would access that water would either be through the hose bibs, or they'd have to bring a water truck in lieu of this temporary irrigation. But once established, there's no plan for permanent irrigation. I mean, this number,
okay,
is a good sized number for something.
Yeah, exactly. Of course. All right, but I this is Victory Garden, right? Yeah.
Well, the hose bib would be for the Victory Garden. For that use, we would need the hose bib in that area, but it wouldn't have irrigation. The temporary irrigation was for establishment of plantings, and that again, I think we write into the specifications that they own watering it for a year and making sure it's established, and they can do that with the access to the hose bibs or to bringing in a water truck.
Okay. Great.
But just Mike, isn't that what that did delete? This is for 2 years, so isn't that, I never heard of temporary irrigation beyond making the contractor do it for a longer period.
Right.
So this is reduced. So at some point, the school is going to have to be mindful.
Yeah, year 2.
Yeah, the extra year.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think, it's just making, I agree with Anna Mae. We often see where that, you don't want to spend money on all that and then have them die. But I think that a year, hopefully there's enough pride of ownership in the building that they'll pay attention to that for a year. It's not like we're asking them to water it forever.
Perfect. Thank you.
So we still would own that, correct, Larry or Tina? That we would own a 1-year maintenance period and then a 1-year warranty. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. Typically in the specs. Yep.
Yeah, but I think the school will still have to water it for that second year, because the warranty will say, yeah, presuming you keep them watered. You know what I mean?
Right. No, that's a good point, Tim.
I'm
Yeah.
fine with it. I'm fine with it. I don't think we should spend $50,000 to have a watering service come by that second year.
Right.
Usually they do own at least a year or some period. Yeah, so I'm fine with it.
Okay.
And I think one of the issues we were saying was, if you're going to spend that kind of money on temporary, you could almost put in permanent.
Right. Probably could. Right. If Anna Mae put that hold on, so I'm
Oh yes, no, I understand. You can unhighlight it, please, Tina. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we went through all the yes items. Everything ended up being unhighlighted, which I think with the recommendations, we would be proceeding with these. Unless there's some other exceptions or questions. Okay.
Nope.
Okay, so now the maybes. There's some holds on here.
With me on the fiberglass, I was just saying that's something that could be a definite thing, and if you needed budget, the public safety is fiberglass, right? That's what we're
portions of the trim. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much what we're talking about.
All of these maybes are open for future consideration, right?
Correct.
Yeah, and the other one I would say would be a no, though, with the vapor barrier under the slab. Is that not, that just seems to me to be a bad idea, especially if you've got porcelain tiles.
I would tend to agree with you on that one.
I think
But
that should be a no.
I agreed. I thought it should be left on the list, at least for now, for discussion, but it's not something that that would jump out at me as something we should be doing.
I would just say no, because I've had problems with it, with vapor, with moistures and finishes on my floors. And a friend of mine on a large construction project, all the tile came up. And yeah,
I think it's a no.
I would say that should be no.
I don't think I've seen a building without one recently. Have you guys?
No.
Yeah.
Anybody object to making that a no? All right, make it a no. We'll move on.
Okay. What did we decide on the 1.5A? Just want to make sure.
I could just leave it where it is, I think.
Leave it as a maybe. Okay.
Yep.
So just as a question, when we get to like a bid set, these maybes will all be in the spec as add alternates, deduct alternates? Is that the intent?
Well, we're going to carry these through. If the project gets approved in the fall, we'll go through design development estimate. And so this list will be kept through that estimate, so that if that estimate comes in higher than expected, we have some options to reduce. But they're not necessarily bid alternates yet. I think that decision will come later in the process.
Yep.
Yeah, and I was going to just say we'd want to have a reasonably small number of bid alternates.
Yeah.
Just to keep things from going crazy for the bidders.
And yeah, they have to, obviously, in a filed sub bid environment, they can get really complicated and taking them in order and all of that. So, but by the time we get to bid sets, we're talking about, I would say, 5 or 10 alternates at the most. And simple ones, not ones that involve multiple trades, because that gets tricky.
Sure.
But by then we should have firmer numbers closer to bid.
Yep. Okay.
So one of the ones, and I'm sorry, I didn't
yes.
highlight it, but that I'd like to chat about. It's a fairly sizable number. The gym 2.6. Currently, we own a fully operable partition, which certainly helps from an acoustics perspective if you want to run 2 physical education classes in the gym at the same time. But it's a fairly sizable number, and it's fairly common to use just a net divider. It does impact a little bit the function, as I noted. It does get a little noisy if you're running consecutive or 2 classes at the same time. But I'd be curious to hear if anybody had any feelings about that, because I generally would think that we should consider taking it, but I'd put it as a maybe, just because I know that, some people may feel otherwise.
I would say this is a big request by the wellness teachers to keep it as a solid divider and not a net. So I advocate on their behalf to keep it as is.
That's fine. We can keep it on the list, and since it does impact function, it's one of those things that I don't think we should take unless we absolutely had to at this stage. Okay. You don't need to keep it highlighted. I just wanted to chat about it.
Yep, no problem.
Yeah, Mike, it's Walt. If I had to add lists, I had a short list of things I'd move from maybe to possible yes, and this was one of them based on the big dollar value. I can't remember where I have done this in schools. It's typically a net, but it makes no sense to move it to yes now, and I think we should just keep it as a maybe, especially if there's some desire for it.
Okay.
But it is a big amount, so it's a big cost if we need it, right?
Okay. Were there other ones, Mike, that weren't highlighted that you wanted to go over?
No, I mean, the ones that I touched on while you were going through them, like the, you know, the geothermal and the backup boiler, obviously, you know, before we consider anything with things like that, we have to factor in our goal for net zero and our EUI targets. The lightning prevention system, that's not something that I think is worth taking off, considering we're investing over $80 million in a building. And we would also need to confirm that with the insurance carrier. But actually, I think we did get that confirmed. Did we get that confirmed? It's not required.
I think you really wanted my client over in Norfolk just got their whole system taken out. Yeah.
Yeah. I wasn't too keen on the idea of removing the concrete from the secondaries and telecom duct banks. Just my 2 cents, but it's on there as a maybe. So we can keep it there.
Oh, 3.7, I was just, are you saying? Oh, I was just wondering about that from a code standpoint.
Yeah, code wise, as long as it's in a non-plenum ceiling, you're fine. So
Oh,
I
okay.
guess the question I had on that is what kind of, are we running these in conduits, or, you know, what kind of cables are we talking? Are we running a cable tray, you know, depending on where they're going through, right? You may not be able to do it, I guess is my point.
With maybe more, I would thought it just might be more pain than it's worth.
It's the same cable. It's just, it's a code thing. So we'll have to talk to GDD and figure out, you know, how they, what their spec says and how they're gonna run the cable.
Well, again, this is one we don't need to take now. It's really small dollars. We can leave it on the list, and it's, you know, if we're scrambling to find $7,500, we've got bigger issues.
Bigger
so.
problems then, yeah.
Yeah, I know I held 3.6 and my computer was just going out, so I had to just plug it in, and I missed that conversation. But I just had concerns around that with all of our data systems, our network switchers, our Wi-Fi, our door access, our cameras, all of that. If we lose power, we've seen at the high school what happens when we lose power and not have a UPS system and rely on the generator, and it's not pretty. So I would just have concerns about not having a UPS system.
Or is that something that should be bought as an allowance?
Jeff, I would probably take the other side of that and tell you that you'll want individual UPSs on your racks for those specific equipments. So I actually thought that should be a yes. So let's just keep it here and we'll see how it goes.
Okay.
We don't see too many individual, one single UPS for, you know, maybe in your main MDF, but that's about it these days. Most of these UPSs we see are rack mounted, you know, and they're only good for, you know, the 10 seconds before your generator kicks on. That's all you need them for.
Right.
So, you know, they're pretty small. And depending on what's backed up by them, generally speaking, you can probably get away with in the order of magnitude of like something like 10 of them in a building like this, you know, which would be less than 24 grand. So
yeah, I'm just still mentally scarred, like many people are, of the power outage that went on in the high school that triggered our lockdown. So
yeah.
And that was due to not having UPS. So I want to make sure we can avoid anything like that ever again.
I would just think your IT department might be the one to purchase them, so he has control, or they have control.
Right.
Do they
Well,
know what
that's the other thing is eventually we can decide whether it's in the base for the base electrical contractor, or is it part of FF&E and bought through the technology budget. So we can have further discussion about that on the best approach.
Okay.
Tina, sorry to back up. Can you scroll left real quick?
Sure.
I just had one quick question on the left. Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
On the wall tile, which one was it? Yeah, that one.
11.
Yeah. Is it possible to break that out between, you know, 2.11 could be toilet rooms and drinking fountains, and then the other could be just the drinking fountains?
We can, yeah, we can. So
And they're at different locations, right?
they are generally the drinking fountains. They're near the toilet rooms, and then there's a drinking fountain that's near the gym.
Yeah, if it doesn't make sense aesthetically, forget it, but I would, you know.
It's more durability.
That's why.
You tend to get, as Jeff will attest, some kids that like to write on the walls.
Well, that's why I think at the toilet rooms, it makes sense, but maybe
Yeah.
not at the drinking fountains, which are typically in corridors.
Sure.
That's why if you just broke it out.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, for the handful of drinking fountains that are in the building, it probably would end up being a small number,
Okay.
which is why we lumped it all together with the toilet rooms.
Okay.
But yeah. Okay,
I guess this next one was me, 4.3B. This is $508,000 compared to the yes, which is 4.3A of 317,000. If 100% of the sidewalks are currently asphalt, I don't know. I guess, I know concrete looks better and it's probably more durable, but depends on where it goes. The number might be more like 70 or 60%, right? So
Yeah, and I think we can work that out. Like, we don't need to sort of, split hairs on it. I think what we figured was we would start with 50%. If people think that 80% is achievable, then we could certainly bump it to the yes column.
that was all I was thinking is this, your main walkways should be concrete, but the rest of it, why don't we make it asphalt?
Yeah, I mean, I think we were thinking, trying to keep some of the front entry plaza and
Exactly.
as the kids come off the buses and things like that as potentially as concrete, and then asphalt for all of the other pathways and highways through the courtyards and things like that.
Yep, I agree with that, exactly. I just didn't know what percentage it was. That's why I highlighted it. Might be more than the 317 we're kind of accepting at this point.
Yeah, and again, as we refine the design, that should shake out in the next phase, I would think.
yep. Okay, 4.9, delete the shade sales at the playground.
So this was Jeff's hold, and
Yeah, I held that.
at this stage, I would agree with him. Having some sort of shades on the playground is helpful. They're pretty wide open spaces with no plantings or anything, so having some sort of shade structures is a good thing. Jeff, you want to?
Yeah, at least at this point, I mean, I think if keep it as a maybe or move it to a no, but at least, with that wide open space, it's critical for kids to have shade to go under. And, we're starting to see the effects of global warming. Where we used to have, when we were kids, we'd have 3 or 4 days out of the year that were really, really hot, and that's about 10 or 15 now. So it's only going to get worse.
Okay, 4.10, change the concrete pad at the loading to asphalt.
It should be a no.
Yeah, I agree.
Is that
Anybody
loading dock for where you end up?
Where you're
leaving
gonna put the
dumpsters?
dumpster and the, like.
I agree. That's just the maintenance.
Oh, I actually have somebody who replaced mine.
That's a disaster waiting to happen.
It just gets destroyed.
Okay, makes sense. 4.11, remove the replacement of the existing driveway northwest of Wheelock.
So this one's tough to understand without this sketch, but what this basically is trying to salvage a portion of the existing driveway entry. That's the westerly most entry, which then transitions to the new parking lot and the new drop-off loop. And it basically becomes like a patchwork of asphalt of old versus new. And putting it to quote unquote deferred maintenance means it won't get done. I think, the reason we've looked at redoing the drop-off loop and the parking at Wheelock is because it makes sense for the site, and to shortchange that by having a hodgepodge of existing failing asphalt, I think is a mistake in my mind.
Can we just leave it as maybe? I mean,
Yep.
we can be low on the list of maybe, but.
Yeah.
That could be a
No, that's fine by me.
A lot of money, and I'd like to learn more about it before we.
Yeah, I think you need to see the sketch, Tim. So maybe Arrow Street or Left Field can distribute that as well, just as a follow-up.
Yep, I can do that. Okay, I think the last highlighted item on here is 4.22, replace a portion of the underground primary duct banks with poles and overhead wires.
Yeah, I didn't flag this, but I don't love this one.
I think, I assume that that's coming, you know, where is that coming from?
Coming from Elm Street down the parent drop-off loop,
Yeah, no.
and then it would go underground and across the loop to the building.
This
So
is a no.
there'd be poles and overhead wires along that drop-off.
Yeah, no, and you gotta get underground at some point. I
Yeah.
just don't think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
I actually don't believe the savings either, but that doesn't matter. I just don't think, I think it needs to be underground.
I'm fine with making it no. Not that much money for the terrible.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, oops, I shouldn't have unhighlighted it, but hold on. I'm just gonna highlight these ones that we want to move to no.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so there's 3 items from the maybe that we want to move to no. And then on the no list, there were no holds. Were there any other questions on this one or comments?
I didn't have any problems with them.
Okay. Okay, that is all the VE items. If I go back to the yes, it looks like everything that we had recommended. Mike, you could let us know how, if this is what we should really just proceed with as part of the schematic design. And these get.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't hear any objections, so I guess, you know, speak now if anybody objects to anything, but if I don't hear objections, then the design team will just go ahead and incorporate these into the base project.
Yep.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay.
And then
Great.
the rest we will just keep on the list for future phases
Yes.
if needed.
Yep. Great. That's everything.
All right, we ran a little bit long, I think because we might have started late, but I think that was all of our agenda, correct?
Yep. Yes.
Yes.
Given that we had a 3-hour meeting last week and 2.5 this week, I think we're just going to close out this meeting tonight. We've taken enough of your time over the last couple of weeks. And so I will enter, unless anybody feels differently, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move.
Looks like I got a
I'll make a
motion.
motion to adjourn, yes.
All right, motion to adjourn from Tom Erb. Do I have a second?
Second, Anna Mae.
Second from Anna Mae, running down the list. Mike Marcucci,
Yes.
Mike Weber,
Yes.
Anna Mae O'Sheabrook,
Yes.
Jeff Marsden,
Yes.
Tim Bonfati,
Yes.
Walt Kincaid,
Yes.
and Mike Quinlan also votes yes. Thank you, everybody, and I hope you don't have to go out tonight because the lightning's pretty crazy out there. All right,
Bye.
we'll talk
Thank
soon.
you.
Good night,
Take care,
everyone.
everyone.
Have a good one.
Ciao.